Would you say you are a man?
Yeah.
I think it's such a difficult one because, as I say, I don't know where somebody like you should go to the bathroom, and I imagine even you would not want you wouldn't want a law that says men can go into the women's bathroom, because there are always some men who want to look at women doing their thing, which is just a bit gross, really, because
and that's where it gets into the many reasons why people take on the label with the fetish side of it. And that is going to be, I believe there's a researcher, I forget his name. Oh my God. I think his last name is Blanchard.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay. But he actually lays this out pretty clearly of the different types of trans people. And one of them is autogynephilic. You may have heard that word. And the other is, it's called like HSTS, which is like homosexual transsexual. Okay. And the issues that I've seen over the years coinciding with the politicization of this topic and the widening of the umbrella, trans didn't used to be an umbrella, it was one specific thing, is that people with fetishes are now calling themselves trans, and these are straight men. It's not to say that every person who's attracted to women and identifies as a trans woman is going to be an issue, but it's hard not to see that of the ones that are an issue, whether it makes the news or not, it's like they are all males who are attracted to women. And so then you have to question why they would be in a certain space. Whereas historically, homosexual transsexuals, which I would fall under that category, are people who, like you mentioned earlier, are people who earlier in life maybe struggle with the homosexuality issue or were naturally feminine in a way that, in that life, in that individual person's life, it makes more sense to transition for them individually. That's definitely the case for me. And so you can see how the motivations of those two types of people being in a bathroom or being in a space or even calling themselves trans in general are going to be completely different. Yeah. Anytime you have a man who is attracted to women in a woman's space, there's going to be a questioning of why. And there's not so many reasons why,
You wish it would simpler to be able to differentiate and say this person is clearly a gay trans person and that one's someone interested. But what you're saying is, it's blown my mind a little bit because I've had so many discussions about, and I'm reluctant to ever say this has blown my mind because it's the first time I thought of it, because whenever I say that, everybody gets angry and says, what do you mean it's the first time you thought, you idiot? But, well, then that's fine. Yeah, so they'll do it. But I didn't actually think about that. And I think most people do. I might be wrong about this. I think most people haven't done. That's a really interesting differentiation, that when I think of a trans person in the women's toilets, I am thinking of a
man who's attracted to women.
Yeah, who's in there to take advantage. And I think, I obviously can't speak for all women. I know they all feel very differently about this, but I know I have friends, women who don't mind like gay guys being in these kinds of positions. And some women do mind that. I get that as well.
And historically, before the politicization and the topic really going off the rails, women have been the main friends to transsexual people, homosexual transsexual people, and if you want to go pretty deep into like culture and the cosmetic industry and beauty culture, a lot of stuff is derived from, transsexuals finding out certain hacks with makeup or with whatever, and then women take it. And there was always like a camaraderie because there was an understanding that there was no danger in that.
Because they were gay.
Right.
Yeah.
So when it comes to this new wave of now, cross-dressers and fetishists can call themselves trans and be seen as the same thing as a homosexual transsexual, right? That's going to cause issues because that feeling of safety is completely gone, and for just reasons, because, women are trepidatious about men. And this is something that, I have a hard time understanding trans people who are not empathetic towards women, because trans women specifically, because transitioning is actually giving me a mountain of more empathy for women. When you live the first half of your life being perceived as a male, and then you go and you transition, and if you're actually successful with the transition, you're then perceived as the opposite in society, just walking down the street or being wherever. You start to see the hardships of the other gender. And it goes both ways. If a woman, I have a friend named Buck Angel. Mm-hmm. He's a very famous, I love him. He's a very famous transsexual female to male, and he understands the hardships of men in a different way, because he transitioned and actually, passes and people really see him that way. Yeah. And so when you start to actually experienced some things, you know, a long list of things I could never, obviously, pregnancy, periods, you know, and so many other things. But the more superficial things you start to understand. So you start to understand the threat that men can, you know, pose to women, and why women feel uncomfortable in certain scenarios. And so it becomes clear why, you know, a woman wouldn't want to be in a bathroom with a man who's attracted to women and thinks that because he's dressing like one, that makes him one, you know? Whereas it's hard for people to, especially with an untrained eye and maybe less discernment on this issue or knowledge on this issue, to tell the difference between a trans person who's more of a classical transsexual, I guess you could say, and a fetishist who's assuming it for different reasons. And so I'm also empathetic to that. Like, people who are like, I don't know how to tell the difference. I'm like, it's kind of hard. You'd have to have sort of a, you know, I can tell instantly.
Sort of transdar.
Yeah, I can tell instantly looking at any trans person and feeling their vibe and listening to them speak if they're attracted to women or men.
Interesting. Is it that, and I'm just talking nonsense here, but is it like the ones who are straight look like, maybe they do look more like their mums? They're sort of old fashioned, big hair and stuff.
Maybe, you know, the aesthetic they take on is maybe like a bit more. Maybe I don't really know much about the mom impersonation thing per se, but I know that it's also about energy and vibe. Like if someone puts you off, you know, I believe in a discernment about that. You know, I believe in believing and trusting my gut, and I believe that women have, you know, a gut that's been trained over a lifetime of existing in the world as both a young girl and then a woman, even more so. So. I know it sounds vague, and when you're talking through pixels on a screen and audio, it's like you can't really communicate vibe and aura. But it's like, I think that if I was, you know, the other kind of trans person, I think you would feel that in the room with me right now. So, and I think that women do feel that when they're around these people too. Also, you know, it's a much bigger issue these days with men leaving their women to become women, leaving their wives and their families. Those people are always autogynephilic. They're always attracted to women. That's why they were with women first.
I interviewed one before, actually, a couple of hours ago. Tracy Shannon.
Oh, okay.
But do you know who that is?
No.
Oh, well, we had
today?
Yeah, today, like 2 hours ago. But we had a bit of a disagreement, I think, you know, not in an angry way, but because I think she's been hurt by this, and I understand it, but she's just against like everything, you know, that kind of thing. Like, so she wouldn't be a fan of yours or Buck, for example. And so I gave a bit of pushback, and it's so hard. And even as I speak now, I'm aware there's like, because this will get, you know, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe more views, of all different people. These are all, because you forget those are just numbers, because they're so high. You can't imagine that many people with.
They're people.
Yeah, and they have such different views, and a lot of them hate you or hate, you know, us or whatever, and it's really hard.